kids here.
I guess so. Well, I should have just looked at the
Okay, good morning. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. If you'd rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, please. We are going to start with public input, and first up is Mr. Yoakum.
Vance Yoakum, I write the blog fiscalrangers.com. Just wanted to say I looked at the attachments for this. Thank you for posting them so that they were available for us to look at. And I wanted to say 3 years trend analysis. Yay! I'm bringing it up because I just went to the county strategic planning meeting and they show 1 year. They don't show you anything to compare it to. And especially the Excel spreadsheet in there, showing 3 years of analysis plus what we call variance analysis in the corporate world, which is the reasons why things were changed and moved and everything else. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just looking at the process, which I think is a better step towards transparency. I did look to see if there were any metrics on cost or resources per unit, like per student, per teacher, per school. There was nothing like that in there. Without that, you can't really tell and you can't compare, like even between districts. I would recommend that you have it. I have uploaded a video that I did with Mr. Weeks of the academic dashboard system that you have, which I really, really like. And you don't have anything like that in the fiscal area and with metrics. And I would suggest that, and I'll be passing ideas on to you about some of these systems that have that are actually being used by schools. The city of Tavares has rolled out a benchmark consortium report where they had a presentation. They showed it compared to many other cities, and they are embracing it. They are showing how they compare their police department and others with measurable metrics to other areas. And the mic just went off, I think. And I would encourage that you have that, because otherwise you as a board, if I'm on the outside or somebody say, how do you know that you're efficient, effective, or economical in your operations? I'm not seeing that here. Okay, I see reductions in dollars, but I'm not seeing it in reductions or changes in some sort of a ratio, like a cost per student, cost per school, per classroom, or whatever your objectives are. And I would recommend that you start considering doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cronin?
And I'm wearing Republican red, by the way. Like my friends here.
Good morning.
Superintendent, board members, good morning.
I've got a lot of questions on the staffing plan, and really just
disappointed that nobody sat down and went over this with me. There's a lot of changes here. May agree with all of them, but I really don't understand them all. So I'm just going to go through some of them. I'm probably not going to get answers today. Transportation, I see we're sticking with one trainer, which I kind of think that's a good thing. The diesel mechanic, I'm not sure about, but I guess we can, I'm just hoping that if we see that we need it, we put him back on. Bus assistant 2s, I believe that is an incorrect number. Let me see if I think you've got 24 of them, and I think there's 1 or 2. Not sure if the rest of them are bus assistant 1s, but bus assistant 2s are more money. And the unassigned drivers, we did that a couple months ago, and you know, we can't fill the positions, but the positions are needed. Maybe not the 10 of them, but they are needed if we could fill them. So that's another thing I wanted to bring up. The transportation clerks, we have 4 transportation clerks, not 3. I looked to see if there was some other issues in there, but if there was a secretary or something or a data clerk, but I don't see anything else that would be over, but we have 4 transportation clerks. The ELC, it's not ELC, it's charter choice in ELC maybe. The assistants says that we have 16. I think we currently have 13 for assistant site coordinators. Grounds, I'm believing you must be changing. I don't know, the positions that you're doing away with, I don't know if they're all open positions. I see you're doing away with a logistic specialist, and you're adding a central warehouse driver. So I don't know if that person is the same person, or if this is 2 different things. Food service, I'm not sure about at all. It just says that it was in the allocation formula for the school. We were hoping to see some changes there, so I don't know if changes have been there. Right now, we have the manager included in the labor hours, when a good part of the managers don't ever leave their office. So if that's the case, then it shouldn't be included in the labor hours. There was a change in the head custodian position for Howie, which probably should have been done a long time ago. There was no reason to have a head custodian, 2 head custodians in Howie. In IT, you know, I'm not so sure if all those positions are open to closed, but it seems like we keep doing away with classified positions and adding higher exempt positions.
Thank you. Hopefully next time somebody sits down and discusses this with us.
Thank you, Ken.
Can I just, I know, Ms. Cronin, that Mr. Carr, I don't know if you received his messages. Our intent was to sit down with you last week. I know that he, while he and I were in the room, he did contact you. He left I think he sent an email.
Wasn't resolved until Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. All right. At this point in time, I know if you want to invite senior staff up to review the staffing plan, that'd be excellent.
All right, well, we do have one single item on the agenda this morning, and that is to bring to you the changes to the staffing plan for the 18-19 school year. And I will start us off with some of the smaller departments, and then invite some of the chiefs to come up that had more significant changes to go through those, and many of the questions that were just asked can be addressed at that time. I know that they're prepared to do so. So with that, hopefully you have a copy of it in front of you. So I want to just start with what our goals were. Our first goal was, if you'll remember, I brought you some changes last year, which were part of a reorganization to provide a more efficient structure to better support our students and schools. So this is kind of round 2 of that. So you saw some changes. You'll see more changes and additional realignment as we continue to realign, one, to reduce costs at the district level, and also to increase those efficiencies. Our secondary goals were, where possible, we started by eliminating vacant positions to minimize the impact on people. That was our primary objective as we looked at these positions, whether or not we could operate without them, and if we could, we were, many of them had been frozen previously in the year, so as to not sustain them for the following year. We also looked at our long and short-term academic goals to determine their impact on our vision and mission and whether or not the programs and positions that were directly aligned to that, if we, again, could eliminate any of those along the way as well in alignment to those goals. And then, if you'll remember, we had 3 competing goals financially that we have been working towards with our financial recovery plan. And I'll just remind you that this is a further attempt to do so to help us meet those 3 needs. One is greater compensation for our employees, restoring our fund balance, and increasing our capital outlay funds, and avoiding the transfer of those dollars where possible. So those were kind of our main goals and our secondary goals as we worked over the past several months. Actually, this was not something that we've done in the short term, but rather been a long-term project, of course, across the year as we were continuing to work on these goals. So a little bit about what you have in front of you. You have a copy of the staffing plan. You'll also have some other supporting documents that we'll go over with you. So the highlights, the changes on the staffing plan are shown to you in blue, and we'll go over each of those with you by department. And the document also divides the staffing plan into sections, so each of the chiefs or I will go over those sections with you, and that each of the sections is followed by the fiscal impact, so that you'll see the net savings and changes financially within each of those sections. As I said, this is phase 2, so in your packet you'll see what we brought to you last year. If you'll keep in mind that as part of that reorganization, we did reduce district costs by about a little over $170,000, with an overall cost savings of $898,000 as we look to eliminate some of the programs and positions that have been attached in the strategic finance plan previously, where we eliminated some of those that were attached to grants and other projects, that were eliminated at that time. So I just remind you again that this is phase 2, to keep in mind that we had made some substantial cuts prior to the 17-18 school year when we brought this to you in May. So we're going to go over the packet. You see the summary charts that will follow along with what's on the screen, and this is what was in board docs. And we're going to do this by department. With each of them, again, you'll see the cost savings by department. So this was starting with my very small department. I have just a few positions that are listed under my section. And if you'll recall, there was an administrator on special assignment at that time that was added under my department, and that position has been eliminated. You'll see the savings below, but I will tell you that that position will reappear again under the Chief of Transformation, and so we'll see that added back at a different cost level at that time. But again, we're doing it by department, so I wanted you to know that that is being eliminated, but it is being moved. In finance, there was one vacant position. That's an accounting assistant. This is a small department for a large district, and felt like there were no positions currently being filled, which we could do without. But there was a vacant position that we did not fill, so you'll see a small savings there as we eliminated that vacant position of the accounting assistant. Under the chief of staff, again, another small department for a district this size. So we looked again, are there any vacant positions? There was one vacant position. This was previously listed under the strategic finance plan. So as we eliminated that page of the document, we either rolled positions into the staffing plan or they were eliminated. And remember, that was that huge savings that you saw in the 17-18 staffing plan changes. But there was an evaluation and compensation analyst position that was vacant, and so it was eliminated. And there you see the cost savings, and that was the actual salary and benefits of the individual who vacated that position. So we know that that is a true savings. On page 16, just for your reference, that is where at the midsection where it starts with high school schedule. This is on page 16. You don't have to refer to it now, but you might just want to note that everything in the strategic finance plan had been eliminated with the exception of the virtual learning lab facilitator. And these are all indicated In the far right column is school-based. Now look at, these are school-based positions. These are not district-based positions. And I'm sorry, they were rolled into the either the staffing plan or the allocation document. The school testing specialists that we retained, the literacy paraprofessionals, and the high school graduation resource facilitators. Those are the only positions that we have retained from the strategic finance plan. And those are listed on page 16. Everything else under that section has been eliminated either in this document or in the 17-18 staffing plan, and that was just there for your reference. We'll be cleaning that up following the approval of the document. The last section that I'm going to just call your attention to is that of the Chief of Technology. Again, the changes are in blue, but I'll refer you to this chart, which is 3 pages in. And this is a summary page that shows the cost of those changes. So just quickly to go through these, we've deleted an assistant manager information and operations services position. It was a vacant position, but we are reposting it at a lower cost position under information systems specialist. So you'll see the cost savings there as we've reduced that position. We had 3 network administrative positions. We've eliminated 1 that was vacant. And we have retitled those as infrastructure support technicians. So where you saw 3, you will now see 2 under a different title, and you'll see the cost savings. Again, that was a reduction in terms of the position title, moving from the network administrator to an infrastructure support technician as at a lower banding grade, and then the elimination of 1 of those positions and the actual cost savings of salaries and benefits. If there was a person in the position, we use that exact savings, so it's a true indication. If it was a vacant position that had been vacant for a while, we used an average salary cost of that. Deleted a computer support specialist and added it as a technology operations and logistics specialist, and all of these that have been retitled, you will also see changes to job descriptions that reflect these changes. There was a small cost increase to that of $780.54. There was a vacant senior student information analyst position that was deleted. There was a student information analyst position that was changed to a student information analyst, and there was an increase moving from an E12 to an E15 in that position. There was also a .25 custodial that was eliminated, and 1 position that was renamed only with no fiscal impact. So overall, you see those changes resulted in a cost savings or cost reduction in the staffing plan of $155,994.19. The last 2 sections had the majority of the changes, and so I'm going to have first Mr. Carr is going to come and go over his section in detail, followed by Dr. Weiskopf, who will go over her sections, and then please stop us along the way if y'all have any questions about what's being presented.
And I'm going to take a time while we're transitioning just to let the board know at 10 o'clock I'm going to step out for a conference call the superintendent and I have discussed in lieu of pulling staff out that you guys need to hear from, and the superintendent being here, I'm going to accept that, and then I'll step back in, but I will pass the gavel to Mr. Gamble to carry out discussion in my absence.
Thank you very much. So just kind of jump right into the changes. If you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt at any time. Basically, we're on page 11, Chief of Operations, looking at the change custodial. We eliminated a 4-hour position due to reevaluation of square footage. Inspector Code Compliance, this position had been vacant and unoccupied for at least a couple of years, so we've gone ahead and removed that. In facilities, we've had a change. Basically, the director of facility has been deleted with a new position of facilities manager. Likewise, we had a project manager of construction that had been vacant for at least 2 years. We've gone ahead and taken that off the books. food service, what we have done in the calculation, which we're just finalizing actually Friday morning, so to that, Ms. Cronin, I apologize. So one of the questions that she brought up, I'll be able to answer a couple of them on her behalf. The food service manager, the food service assistant manager, and the dishwasher. The dishwasher is a new position, which to stay on that, we've added approximately 23 positions. You'll see that's denoted in the hours, but they are not part of the allocation. And we've also added 3 unassigned food service workers, bringing the total of 10. Everything else pretty much remains the same. That's food service.
I got a
Sir.
question. Under the dishwasher, you've got 11 and a half?
That is for 23 positions. Yes, sir.
Okay, yes.
Thanks,
At
sir.
4 hours apiece.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
And that was a new position, and again, to reiterate, that is not part of the calculation formula. And they are assigned actually to the appliance itself, so
Right.
where there's a dishwasher. So in the event that a school gets a dishwasher, then we will respond accordingly to fulfill that position. 13. Grounds and operation. We have a grounds worker 4 that has been vacant, and that's going to be decreased due to attrition. We have a head custodian 2 position that was approved by the board. To better facilitate the operations, we have changed that job description to basically they're going to be a plant operations assistant. So in that, the head custodian position 2 is going away and being replaced with the plant operations assistant. No change in pay, change in job description. The logistics specialist, you'll see, has been decreased from 7 to 6. That is also in a name change, and you'll see that added position, and this does address Ms. Cronin's question, one of them, anyway, or 2, 3, is that person is going to be now the central warehouse delivery driver. So that is a new job, but it's going to be the same pay grade, so no fiscal impact other than for better organization of grounds and warehouse operations. The maintenance manager has been eliminated and being replaced with the supervisor of warehouse and grounds. The irrigation tech, that's from previous. Going to the next, growth and planning. The director of growth and planning has been eliminated and going to be replaced with the coordinator of growth and planning. There may be a typo in what you have, just to point out, the secretary 2 position, that is currently in place through the end of the year and will be reevaluated July 1st. The senior planner has been replaced with, one senior planner has been replaced with the coordinator of growth and planning. Now looking at maintenance operations north on page 15, we look at the highlighted blue. We have a capital projects manager. That position, the individual in the position has retired, and that is going away by attrition or vacant. Coming down, you'll see a highlighted blue to the right. We'll have a electronics technician, where we're decreasing by 1. That is a name change. And if you come down further, just to get a little bit off, you'll see a production assistant. So that is for that position. So again, that is a name change only. The lead painter, that has been vacant for a couple of years. That position will go away by attrition and or vacant position. No one is in that position. The maintenance worker 1, that is also vacant in attrition. We are doing away with the maintenance 1 worker classification due to limited skill sets. No longer are going to be have a function in our workplace right now. The manager of maintenance has been deleted, and that will be replaced with the supervisor of maintenance combined north and south, or just known as supervisor of maintenance. That is on the north.
Production assistant.
I'm sorry?
We have a new production assistant.
Yes, that I mentioned, that was with the electronics technician was being replaced by that production assistant. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So that was where I kind of jumped ahead a little bit to say that was a name change in job description only. No fiscal impact. Yes, sir. On the south, we have maintenance inventory assistant 1, that's a decrease by attrition. Maintenance worker 1, as stated from the south, that position is vacant and being deleted. The maintenance manager is also being deleted, and again, from the previous, that will be assumed by the maintenance manager north and south, now known as the supervisor of maintenance. Going over to transportation. Basically, we have a few changes here. We've got, as we come down to the first highlighted blue, we've got the master diesel mechanic. That position is going from 2 to 1, and that is being frozen and will be further evaluated to see how it will work. We're doing a beta test to see if we can function efficiently with 1 master mechanic. The master paint and potty, basically due to the skill sets required for that, has been replaced by the paint and body technician. So we're doing away with the master body and paint and replacing with paint and body. And should that individual have the skill sets to be a master, we can take a look at reopening that position. Sure.
On the master mechanic,
Yes, sir.
it was 4, then went to 1.
I think it was 2, and it went to 1.
It was 2, then it's like 4, then to 1.
It's the one that struck. That's replaced the one. Yeah, it does.
Thank you, Lynn. That was Lynn Collins providing clarification. Thank you. Stand up, Lynn. Okay, so that's where we are on transportation. And then in the following pages, it gives a cost summation. And rather than going through that, which we've pretty much just gone through, I'll direct you to page 20, and that highlights if you see any correlation that you think might be an error on the summary. You'll see that it was a separate page for positions that were either name changes, again, that we've talked about with no fiscal impact, and then obviously at the bottom of page 20, the proposed net savings that these changes will facilitate will be close to $750,000.
The idea of unassigned custodians, would that fall under here?
The unassigned
That's right. If we were
custodians?
That's right.
For what, yes, sir, that would fall,
What-
yeah, that would fall under the plant operations. Yes, sir.
Was there any conversation or dialogue around the merits of that idea?
Yes, there was basically attached to the allocation plan, and within that, what we're looking at is a reallocation based on square footage that's to be used in evaluating the actual cleaning area. So we are basing that on a fish report, the fish reports that we have, and that assessment has gone out to all the schools for them to check, validate, and verify for errors, because we're showing the majority of schools having an overage. So we are going to have to go back and take a look. At this point in time, Lynn is showing it on the allocation formula as an overage to correct. The correction will be done through attrition and/or reassignment. When that is done, we hope to have substantial cost savings where we can come back to the board and show that substantial cost savings to justify those positions that you're speaking of.
So let me make sure I understood what you said. So So we're auditing the square footage and making sure that that complies with what we think that we had based on how many custodians we had allocated. And we think that perhaps we might have over-allocated custodians based
Yeah.
on the square footage.
Yeah, that's the bottom line, yes, sir.
And so when all that's refigured, that you'd have some positions left over.
Well,
Because
I'll
you would
have
reduce the
an
number of
overage.
custodians
I
out there.
won't necessarily have position, I'll have, you know.
You have more positions than you need.
I'll have more hours, let us say,
Okay.
rather than positions. Yes.
All right. Okay. And what's the timeline, do you think, for that coming back?
Well, we've already done the calculation. I've sent it out to the principals. They're evaluating, and then I'm gonna have to coordinate and go back. So, look, I don't, I'm probably looking at, probably I'll have it finished in hopefully 6 weeks.
Okay.
Because wait, from the emails I'm getting back, pretty much everybody is challenging it. So we'll have to physically go out and do a plant survey of all the schools again, or at least address what's in question.
How do we not know our square footage?
Well, I know the square footage, and I know what's submitted to the state. So I think it's, how I interpret it is, it's not that we don't know it, it's just creating awareness, you know, to the principals, and we may have had a couple of, for example, this is where it comes from, to your point. We have portables that were in use that are no longer in use and have been removed from campus. We have had buildings that have been taken offline that were not part of the formula that have since this year been put back online. And that calculation, we had not taken into consideration that one building had been put back into service. So those are two examples of why there's a discrepancy in that. Likewise, formally, there were calculations to include areas that were not to be included, as previously stated, like in mechanical and equipment rooms, electrical rooms, et cetera, without going through that laundry list.
In my understanding also that whenever we went into the field maintenance, especially at the high schools, then there was supposed to be hours taken away at that time, is what I understood.
Yes, sir, and they were not. That is correct.
And as I told you, I kind of disagree with that.
You haven't, and they have not been taken away, and we'll have to have a conversation about that for the high schools. Yes, sir.
When that, what you call it, audit, review, assessment, whatever we want to call it, is completed, can we take a look at that and to hear the findings? I'd be really interested to see how.
Well, I can give you the
that impacts.
findings now, if you'd like. I can copy all the board members on where we are right now on the overage.
Okay.
Would you do that, please?
Yes, sir. Well,
At some point, this idea of the unassigned custodian, I think, has a lot of merit, and so I'd love to see that come to fruition. When I think about how often a custodian is out for an extended period of time, and you have the remainder of the staff trying to pick up the slack, it just doesn't happen, and that's really damaging to morale. And then looking at the look at the call-in factor, and we have that many custodians call in a day across the whole district, that clearly we'd have some work for these people. So.
and if I may even add to that, with your permission,
Yeah, mhm.
also if we have a viral outbreak and we need to do a deep clean,
Sure.
I really would prefer to have a staff that's highly trained to be able to go out and do that. And then likewise, what we kind of came up with last year, one of the things that are kind of remiss, it kind of goes back to the busing, and that is looking at, also cleaning the buses, because we had a reoccurrence. And we made assumptions that could be one of our weak links, that we didn't clean the bus. So now we have protocols in place, and then also with the route management adjustments that we make, sometimes it's not as easy to figure that out, because we have to have a snapshot of that day, because they may have doubled up on that route for the existing concerns that we have with that, as you're very well aware.
All right. And the point at which we'll actually vote on this is just when we approve the budget, right? Come July and September. Is that right?
You're talking about the staffing plan?
That's right.
It will actually be up for your approval on Monday's board meeting.
Okay.
Now, remember, what you're referring to now with the custodians was part of your allocation formula that was already approved. And so what he's referring to is based on the formula that you all approved previously.
Right.
They've gone back and made those adjustments. But rather than just go ahead and take away the hours and the impact that would have on people and schools, we've said we'll look at it through attrition as well. But there's a huge cost savings in that formula when you back out closets and other rooms that you don't actually clean, that
Sure.
were part of the original formula that are no longer there. So
So remind me, was it like 20,000 square feet or something?
That is correct.
That the
That is-
generated, okay.
Yes, sir.
And so this report will show us there's not actually 20,000 feet for you to clean. It was only like 16,000. And so
No, it's still
therefore-
based on 20,000, okay? But what it is, let's just take an example, if we, just as the superintendent pointed out, if we included the rooms of a particular facility plant, it may have come out to 25 or 26,000 or 23,000.
Right.
So then we're over.
Right.
And that is what we're seeing is that example.
Sure. Okay.
Everybody good?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. What you call your next witness?
Next up, is Dr. Weisskopf.
Morning. So my time with you might be easier if you took the actual staffing plan, get a copy of that, right? And then I have an extra white page that Natalie hopefully has passed down to you or is coming down to you. And if you put those side by side, it'll probably help with, I haven't started yet, just kind of hang on to it and I'll walk you through it.
We
right?
haven't started the timer yet.
Yeah, all right, 3 minutes. So, as you know, a year ago, we brought you a reorg chart that regionalized services as well as allowed for more collaboration between the district departments that focused on school and student support. But there were 3 places that we did not reorganize, and that is professional learning, accountability, and curriculum. And so we spent some time this year, the superintendent and I spent some time with 13 focus groups with teachers, and we received some feedback regarding the areas that I'm speaking to today in this first slide, and how they could better support schools. And so we took into consideration that feedback from those teacher focus groups, as well as our experiences this year, and realized that we could strengthen school staff and student support by merging these 3 departments. And this helps us align the idea of what we teach with our expectations for all classrooms regarding 21st century learning, and ensuring that we are aligning ways to measure progress as well. So what you see up here, I just want to start with this, is that I did do a merger, and you'll see that reflected in the staffing plan. The yellow is assessment, what used to be evaluation and accountability. The gray is professional development and those positions, and blue is curriculum. So as we move through the staffing plan, you'll kind of see how this merger looks. And I'm proposing to you that we create this structure, and as we work through the staffing plan today, I think you'll see that not only does this structure allow for more efficiency and consistency, but you'll also see that it brings a significant cost savings to the district. So just a reminder as to what my department looks like is, so this, with that change, you'll see an organizational chart here of the Chief of Transformation. Allows me to have 5 executive directors, with each region having a number of schools into their, and what they oversee and supervise, as well as an executive director of academic services and the departments that they have, and then a new executive director of curriculum instruction and assessment, which will oversee accountability as well. So just a reminder that each one of my executive directors does not oversee one thing, they oversee a number of multiple departments. So I wanted to make sure that you understood that as I bring you this plan with a lot of cost savings, we're getting skinny, so in teaching and learning, and I know that was our charge, and I think we've risen to that, but I do want you to know that these people have a lot of stuff on their plate, and so this is currently the Executive Director of Academic Services. You'll notice that the new Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment has accountability, curriculum, and professional learning within it. And each region, again, has a number of schools that they oversee and have the charge to improve student achievement and student learning for all. So with that, let's get started. So if you look at your staffing plan, And if you're on page 1 of the staffing plan, and you look at your white sheet along with that, if you go to the first section on accountability and assessment, or academic services and interventions, I'm sorry, you'll know that in blue that we eliminated a program specialist, and that program specialist is vacant. So you also know on the white sheet that I've listed the positions that are vacant, so it will help you see that we are doing a lot of this through attrition. In the second section on page 1, you'll see accountability and assessment. We changed the name, which was formerly evaluation and accountability. And you'll see that if you look on the right side of the white sheet, that we've eliminated an accountability analyst, a program evaluation analyst, and a program innovation and evaluation specialist. Changed that name and added an accountability and system improvement specialist.
Where's that?
It's on the white paper.
On the white paper, and it's also the second line on the staffing plan, under accountability and assessment. So that is a new, it's not exactly a new position, we just changed the name to better fit in a job description that better fits what they're doing now. And so you'll notice, if you look at the white sheet, the salary is exactly the same, and that's because the last one on the delete in that section, the program innovation and evaluation specialist, has been moved over to the accountability and system improvement specialist. Does that make some sense? If you go to page 2 in the staffing plan, you'll see choice, charter, and community ed at the bottom. And you'll see that we've eliminated a teen parent resource teacher that has been vacant all year. So that has been deleted.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
On that same page, it talks about a correction to funding only. What's that in regards to? Secretary 2, and then also supervisor of choice, charter, and community ed.
So this is it's the correction to how it's funded. It's now it's funded from general fund 70% and out of that project 30%. So this position's still there, just the funding source has changed. Is that correct, Lance?
Okay. I just saw it in blue that says a correction to it, so I was just, okay.
What is the load on the teen parent teachers?
She asked, what is the load on the parent teacher? And I can't, I don't know. I'll have to find out for you.
Because we only have 2 countywide,
We do.
and I know they have to travel.
I don't know. Katie, do you know that answer?
No,
We
we
have
had 3.
Yeah, we had 4. And we're going to
now
3.
3.
Got it.
Mhm. Do
Right.
you know the load? I don't know.
$35
Families.
human beings? Okay.
How long has that position been vacant, do you know?
A year.
A whole year?
This year.
Oh, so these folks already know what it feels like to have that
Burden.
level.
Yeah.
If you also look on that page, on the next page, actually on page 4, if you start at you'll see college and career readiness. I'm sorry, page 3 of your staffing plan, right?
Okay.
We eliminated the TSA guidance services, which is a program specialist for dual enrollment. And we added the administrative coordinator of college and career readiness, which will also help serve the dual enrollment role. And we also moved, if you kind of go back on the white sheet, so look at the white sheet for a second. This way. If you go up to accountability and assessment, and you see the first deletion of the accountability analyst, we moved it to college and career readiness as an add. You see that? So we felt like that position was better served over there. Those 2 departments were really doing some work together, and it helps us, we felt like that was a better fit. Can I see that?
No. So the TSA guidance person went to administrative coordinator of college and career
No,
readiness?
no, no, no. They're two different positions.
When,
This position was deleted, but I did add an administrative coordinator of college and career readiness.
To here,
yeah.
got it.
But the accountability analyst came from assessment and accountability and moved to college.
So
and
it's
career.
not a real cut either.
On page 4 of your staffing plan. I'm sorry about the mix-up, but on the white sheet, curriculum and instruction is first, so you'll have to look at page 4 at the bottom. You'll see that we've deleted the director of K-12 curriculum instruction and assessment. And then if you move up into curriculum, instruction, and assessment, that new position, we've added an executive director of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. This is where you see the admin on assignment, and it'll be for 1 year only, till 6/30/19. And then we've eliminated out of this section, a director of professional learning and leadership, a grant specialist, 7 instructional coaches, and 3 program specialists.
These instructional coaches, was that for the first year teachers that were, is that these people?
It
I don't
was,
see the first year
it
teachers.
was. And I tell you what, if you'll hold that question, so I can tell you kind of
Okay.
how we're gonna serve that.
Yes, okay.
Will that help?
Yes,
But that is that position.
okay.
Any questions about those?
So the administrator on assignment, so, and it might have been almost in this one of the slides that I saw, does that person oversee, particular projects or certain elements of that?
So that person is currently the director of K-12 curriculum. They have
Okay.
1 year left with us, and
Alright.
so they're gonna help with the transition
Okay.
of the merger of curriculum, instruction, and assessment.
All right.
So they'll still have a large part of work in curriculum,
Okay.
but knowing that that's gonna be a position that, will retire next year.
Okay.
Just one quick question about the grant specialist. We're doing away with that position completely. Is there no one gonna be there? Nobody in grants?
We are, so that actual department, was eliminated throughout this year.
Okay.
The strategic, and that's also in here as well. But we know that, in my department, that all of us are looking for grants. Oftentimes, those were grants that were written, and then other people we had to implement. So we felt like that it'd be better if, as we looked for grants and felt our needs, we could go out, seek the grants, and the people writing the grants would be the people implementing the grants.
Okay.
So we do that, but I will tell you that is work we will be taking on. So,
So the grant
and we'll
writing
have
doesn't
some
go
shared
away?
responsibility.
It's just the people who are implementing the grant are actually writing the grant now?
Right.
Okay.
But they're also doing a lot of other work.
That's true. That's
Where
true.
that person was writing grants, so
So
I know we're seeing that.
do you anticipate any decrease in the level of grant funding we get as a result? Not to say that every grant we got was necessarily a good one. You know, sometimes there are obligations of that.
Right.
Nothing's really free.
Right.
You know, so,
I think we're gonna look for grants that are very tailored to what we need
mhm.
and to make sure that we can implement it to help us move forward and not distract us.
Okay.
Does that help?
And if I
Yeah.
could add to that, I also met with Carmen, because, they've added some grant writing services through the Ed Foundation. And a lot of what their work is in grant writing is supporting our initiatives. And so we're going to collaborate on some of those grants. We've got a workshop coming up where the Ed Foundation and us are going to really sit down and look at our strategic initiatives. And so they're going to be assisting with that as well. So we'll use them and their grant writer to jointly apply for grants, which I think will increase our possibility of getting grant funding through the Education Foundation. So it seemed like a better way to
Smart.
maybe go
Very
through that.
smart.
So.
Okay. Thank you.
So if you move into, page 5 of your staffing plan, you'll see exceptional student education. On the right side of your white sheet, we're eliminating a secretary 2. That position is vacant. It does not say that on your white sheet, but I did check into that. It's a vacancy. We are also eliminating a physical therapist. That's also vacant. And on the right side, we're adding 2 occupational therapists, as well as a certified occupational therapy assistant. a project manager that's going to help with our Medicaid, and I'm going to let Diane speak to that for a few minutes.
So I thought this would be a good time to interject a commercial, a Medicaid commercial. If you'll remember, it was about a year ago, I brought to your attention that we are one of 3 districts in the state of Florida who does not bill for Medicaid service. So I began to wonder why that was the case, and wanted to rectify that issue, because we know that a district this size, looking at other districts of similar size and demographics, that's a loss of about $500,000 to $1 million a year in Medicaid billing services. So you saw the elimination of one of the analyst positions, and so as a result, I took that position and I created a new Medicaid position, which I think is now in the section that you're seeing. And Ms. Robin Neild, who's with us this morning, has taken on the oversight of our Medicaid program. And so what she has spent the last several months doing in collaboration with a number of other folks is doing a lot of research. What is our best way to move forward in terms of collecting the maximum amount of allowable dollars for Medicaid services? We also consulted the Department of Education and their Medicaid department and had some consulting services through them to help get us in the right direction. And so we engaged in January a contract with a group called Civic Solutions. They do a lot of the Medicaid billing in the state of Florida for a number of school districts. And what we said was that we're going to do 6 months and take a snapshot. We're going to pay them $1,000 a month for 6 months from January to June 30th, and we're going to look to see what is the return on investment. So Robin has been working very closely with them. They've been putting a lot of processes and procedures in place, and in front of you is a timeline of all to date, the reimbursement timeline and the things that they've done, which I'll refer you to. So in January, we brought Civic Solution in. They billed for just OT and PT services for the month of January. And in the month of January, our return was $6,500 in Medicaid dollars. So in 1 month, the billing paid for the $6,000 the contract that we have engaged in through June 30th, which means everything from February to June it's paid for. And they estimate, you can see on the funding sheet here in front of you, some of the dollar amounts that we expect to receive for the period ending June 30th. So what I will be bringing to you at some point in the near future is a contract for the 18-19 school year. What I asked them to do, and Robin to really look at, was to look at, based on what they have billed through to date, which they couldn't give me the exact dollar amount that we've actually billed because everything's kind of working a few months behind in terms of the revenue. But I will have probably in the next few weeks to date the monies that we've generated through the Medicaid billing. I will tell you that last January, we got $47. And this month, we got $6,500. So I would say that's a pretty good return on our investment thus far. So when I spoke with the folks from Civic Solution, along with Robin a few weeks ago, when we looked at this and they went through it, they said that by June, you will have paid for the next year's contract, which is $30,000, and what you will see is at a minimum a return of almost $500,000. They have very much underestimated that because we didn't want to bring you a promise that we couldn't keep. So they said, at a minimum, we're going to say that next year that you would bill in Medicaid $429,000 back into the district. So I think that this was a good time to interject kind of this commercial about where we are with our Medicaid billing, and I will tell you that it does require some time on our employees, and we are considering the fact that, first of all, OT and PT, as we really looked at the impact on those folks that are doing it, they have to keep documentation anyways in files. So for them, moving from a paper system to an online system has made their work a little bit easier, according to the folks that Robin has spoken with. We had a lot of help from Lake Hills because we took our largest transportation, ESE transportation department, and worked very closely with the principal there to develop a system for transportation that would allow us to collect the maximum number of dollars for the billing of Medicaid and also create a system to have the least amount of impact on our drivers. And I know that they've been able to work very closely on that, and we feel really good about the processes that are in place for that. The biggest impact is probably on our speech teachers. It does take an estimated 16 minutes to 30 minutes additional time for them to do some input of data entry. We also know that this is a critical shortage area for us. And so as we think about these dollars and how we want to use them in the future, that might be an area where we might want to create some inequities in our salary schedule for our speech and language folks by investing some of those dollars back into the program, which would be our intent for all these programs, would be how do we best utilize those dollars back to support the programs and the people doing the additional work along the way. So just know that we're in conversation. Of course, those are all our bargaining things that we'll have to consider, but that's something that we just want to make sure that they realize that we do know that there is additional workload on their part. And at the end of the day, these folks are generating somewhere from $500,000 to $1 million in additional funding that will support all of our kids in schools. So we're certainly appreciative of their efforts. And Robin is here if you have any questions, but she has just been a tremendous resource for us as she has really set us on a path, I think, to collect some dollars that are much needed for our district. So I want to thank her for her work. And so that's where we are with Medicaid. Any questions on that?
I have just a question. If we're outsourcing the process and the reporting, what does the manager do?
That would be Robin's position. So I told her you may want to come up and just give us a little brief intro into your position, as this is a new position for us, and the work that she's being done as the contact or liaison with Civic Solution. Also a lot of training. I know she'll probably mention that they've been working on as well. And with her is our Director of ESE, Tara Hart, and this does fall under her department.
Yes, currently the kind of work that I'm doing is preparing the processes and the training for the people that are involved. We began with the OTPTs and had some training with them, not just for how to input their data, how to keep their records electronically, how to use the Max Capture system, which does the billing. This really is a time-saving effort. I've talked to other districts who don't coordinate with a consultant and work with a group, who have to go in weekly to what they call the lab, and they have to do their Medicaid billing, which means coordinating and understanding a medical side of a system that we want our educators and our service providers to not have to be involved in. And so there are a lot of processes that are involved that I'm working with, getting the parent consent forms. The company takes care of identifying who the students that are Medicaid eligible are. That's HIPAA related, and so it's very confidential. But we do communicate with our providers, our nurses, our OTPTs, and currently school psychologists, the exact students who need additional support. Processes and training are a whole lot of the heavy lift right now that are going on.
So what does the next phase of your position look like after the folks are trained and you don't have too many new ones coming in?
Oh, yes. Well, we're moving next year into bringing on the SLPs, the speech language people, and behavior analysts, the social workers, and the school guidance counselors. That's the next group. But every day, we have to do reports, bringing in and checking on students that are in our system and making sure those students have the qualifications that are needed before we communicate those to the provider program. So there's a lot of interaction involved on the district level to communicate the program and keep it up and make sure that services that are provided are getting the appropriate approval before we can send them off to the provider that bills.
And it's accurate that this position is actually reimbursed back by Medicaid, right? So
It is.
It is,
not
yes.
hit to the general fund.
It is not, and this was if you remember, I deleted a position and then added this position, so there was no cost increase, it was cost neutral. However, we will be able to report her salary back and be covered by the Medicaid funds that we'll generate. So overall, there is a cost savings, which we have captured on your sheet.
Excellent. Thank you.
So that is why you do see on the left-hand side, under the project manager, that there's a zero cost to that. So we also, on that side, going back to the exceptional student education, you'll see there's 3 gifted itinerant teachers. We reduced it in the allocation document by 10
But we put 3 at the district level to be able to serve middle schools. Our middle schools already have services for students who excel with honors classes and advanced courses. And so we felt like this was a better way to serve them. So these 3 itinerant teachers will service the middle schools and the students in terms of what they need and their educational plan. So because we say we have 10, but it's on a different document. So because it's a district position, we needed to add it to the staff, to this staffing plan, but we have already lost 10 in the allocations. So if playing the math, we're still up 7, if you want to kind of put it that way, but we had to add 3 here. So there's really no cost to the district, but it will be on our staffing plan now.
Where is it on the staffing plan?
It is under
Teacher
exceptional student education. And if you look at teacher gifted, it's about the 4th line from the bottom. On
But you're
page
saying
5.
You were saying, where's the other 7?
They're not on here because they're done through the allocation document. So we took them from school-based positions, moved 3 to the district.
Why?
So because we don't actually have a large amount of gifted students that are still being served in the middle schools. So we had like some schools that would have 5 students and 2 gifted teachers. Like we needed to go back and look at all of that as we looked at our school-based allocations. And so we eliminated, we felt like it was a better way to serve them by putting 3 out, so.
What do they do?
So they'll go out and make sure that those students who are still receiving are, I can ask Tara to speak to it, it's probably better than me. She's probably going, let me talk. Because she probably has a better idea of exactly how they're gonna be serving the students.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
So in the middle and high school level, gifted is usually more of a person checking in and monitoring on a student's plan. So they have an education plan, and a lot of those education plans involve them taking honors or advanced courses in some way. So they're already getting the teacher services in that honors course. They don't need a gifted teacher to provide that. But what the gifted teacher provides on their EP is monitoring. Well, when you're monitoring, you're really checking in with that teacher, seeing how they're doing, how are those students doing, are there any needs that those students are presenting that this gifted teacher, who's kind of itinerant, can support that teacher who's providing the services with. So for example, let's say that I'm the teacher teaching advanced U.S. history in 8th grade. And I have 3 students who are gifted who are really struggling with organization and getting their assignments in. So I, as the gifted itinerant teacher, can provide strategies and supports for that teacher to help those gifted students be successful in that class.
Is it one per regional?
It doesn't actually come out to be that way. Go ahead, Tara.
We looked at the schools and we looked at their populations, so it really works out to be one who will serve kind of the north central part of the district and 2 at kind of the south end, because that's where our gifted population is much higher at the secondary level.
So we regionalize as much as we can, but sometimes where the student, there's a more concentration in a certain area that we've got to put more down there.
The original intent, though, was 1 per school. And that's where we got 10 to start with.
Are the other 7 are elementary?
No, they're all the middle schools.
Middle schools. There's 10 middle schools.
And
It was not
yes, it
just-
was,
Some had 2.
Some had
right.
2.
It was allocated based on their population of students who are gifted, but of course that changes every year. So we
Okay.
really relooked at that and said, you know, the way that this is being done isn't making sense. And we don't believe this is the best service delivery model because of what Emily said about the fact that we have courses, specialized courses for students who excel in middle school and high school.
The elementary level, the students are actually in a gifted class, and we have those centralized at a couple of schools.
Yes.
And those teachers are covered through the allocations formula,
Yes,
right?
they're still
But here at
there.
the middle and high school level, kids don't really enroll in a gifted course. They would
Right.
take this whole slew of maybe AP courses or something.
You've got it.
And so this person just checks in. And there used to be 10 of these people.
There were 13.6667, and we reduced it. We kept 3, So 10.6667 are being reduced.
And about how many students would each one of these people be responsible for checking in?
Well, it varied. Like Emily said, we had one school that had 5 students
Right.
with 2 teachers.
That's
So,
crazy ratio there.
we had other schools that had 2 teachers that had 30 students.
So under the new
So,
system?
Under the new system, I would have to double check on that for you because I don't have that in my head. I would have to go back and look at numbers to give you something accurate. If you don't mind, I can do that
that's all right.
easily.
Sure.
Remember, they're more servicing teachers
Yeah.
than they're
Right.
servicing
That's true.
students, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Students. So it's a little bit
Yes.
different, which is why why we moved them to the staffing plan.
Which is why I'm wondering why they're necessary.
Well, we have to provide services because they have been identified as gifted and they have an education plan. So on that education plan, you have to indicate what those services are. And so on their education plan, it would be monitoring, and so we would need a teacher to monitor those students and their progress.
And do they have to be a designated gifted teacher? Is that?
Yeah, they
is it-
have
so
to
is this
have
regulatory
endorsement.
Okay. Because it doesn't seem like we're actually servicing them. We're just following regulatory guidelines, really.
I believe, having been in a district before that does this model, and my actual own children were in this model and were monitored, that person checked in to make sure that that student was being successful. And if you don't have that, sometimes if a teacher isn't endorsed and gifted, they don't necessarily understand giftedness. And so this teacher can provide those supports. Like, for example, my assumption as a teacher might be that my gifted and my students in my advanced honors class are all going to be Johnny on the spot and write in their agenda and turn in their assignments and those kinds of things, whereas there's a lot of evidence about giftedness that says that might not be a strength. So that gifted teacher can really provide those supports when the students struggle and give that teacher tools and strategies to support that. It's kind of like a support facilitator for students with disabilities.
So what are the other 7 people doing?
They're not here anymore. They won't be there. There were 13.
And now we're going down to 3
Now
total.
we're going to 3.
3 total.
You got it.
Okay, I understand now.
When a teacher logs into Performance Matters or something, do they see a little flag that they have Johnny Smith as gifted, right? When you've got 100-something kids.
Yeah, there's an
you gotta
indicator.
find
Yep.
the one.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I thought.
Thank you.
Any other questions about exceptional student education before term leave?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, if you go to page 6 of the staffing plan, you'll see federal compensatory education. And you'll notice that we have moved a ELL region specialist back to this department. And so I can speak more to that when we get into the next section, but you can see it as a deletion under regions on the right. We had 3 of them. 2 of those positions are vacant, and 1 of those we've moved over to federal compensatory education. Do you see it on the white sheet? So what we found is that, we sort of had a plan to regionalize services, and what we found was that this was one position that we still have 1 that exists in the South region, and we're gonna leave that one in place, as that is where many of our students need to be served. This particular position did do a lot more compliance than it did instruction at the time, and so we've moved it back up into the department to serve sort of the whole district in a better way. So if we go ahead and move to the regions, which is actually on page 13, so you've got to move some back. What we also have found is that we had last year, we had 1 regional program specialist that was for curriculum and instruction that was in place. And what we have found is that that we need another. It is a large job to think about improving 14, 15, sometimes 16 schools in curriculum and instruction. And when we have a regional executive director and 1 curriculum specialist, it is an overwhelming opportunity. And so we are proposing that we have another one added to each region. Those will be, you can see how the funding sources, depending on what region they're in, we are able to use some Title I funding and coordinate some funding to make sure that we utilize all of our resources in terms of paying for these positions. So you'll notice that 1.5 positions are being paid out of title, and then 1.5 are being paid out of the general fund. So in reality, we're asking for the general fund 1.5. But so we really try to use all of our resources and all of our funding sources in any way that we can to not impact the general fund. On page 14, you will see the strategic initiatives and grants department, and notice that that entire department and center has been deleted, which offers us a cost savings. I can, I'm sorry. That's the regional, and then if you move here, you'll see strategic initiatives. So looking at the net savings in the transformation department, you can see it on the white sheet, probably a little bit better. But you'll notice that I've broken it down by funding source. So overall, we've deleted a little over $2 million. We've added about $1 million with a net of $990,964.60. If you break that down by how much is in each funding source, you'll notice in the general fund it comes up to about $870,000. In IDEA, it's $111,000, and Title I, it saves us about $8,000. But knowing that, when we think about if we save in IDEA and we save in Title I, we're allowed then to redistribute some of that money so that we can also pay for things in the general fund. We just haven't done that yet. So once this gets approved, then we can look at how our funding is for next year. So really, we are bringing you a savings of right at about $1 million in terms of what it could do to the general fund.
Question real quick on that. Is that right at $1 million now, once this is approved, or is this attrition?
No. So this is all for next year. So I'm thinking of this is a plan for 18-19. And so it would be a cost savings for the plan for next year. Does that make sense? So it's not like we're going to see the budget at the end of this year, in the 17-18, and say that I found $1 million. That's not the case,
no,
right?
No.
But it's not, no. A lot of these positions are through attrition, but we are going to work very hard if there are people who are in some of these positions to make sure that they are placed.
Okay. You might have any other questions?
So I'm going to turn it back over to the superintendent.
Obviously, this was a lot of work, a lot of time and thought that went into this, and I want to thank everyone who participated in this. Like I said, we started this almost a year ago as we knew that we needed to continue to decrease cost. I'm to the point now, and I think Dr. Weiskopf mentioned that we're pretty skinny for a district this size that's growing. Without now moving into services for students, we can't get much thinner. This whole perception of this top-heavy district, I can tell you, it does not exist. And so I would like to go on record that is not a true statement. I think that these folks have done a lot of work. We know that a lot of folks have taken on additional workloads, just like our teachers do, that we all are in this together, and we want to make sure that we ensure the maximum level of supports for our schools and students. And so we will continue to be mindful of spending. We're not increasing positions, but and through attrition, we'll still look for other avenues to reduce cost. But I think as we head into 18-19, we're certainly we're lean, but we're mean. We're going to fight for our kids, and I know we've got great people in places to do this work. So I want to thank you all for your work on this. I know that it's hard when positions go away and people are impacted, but we will take care of people as best that we can and try to minimize the impact as much as we possibly could. But you'll see that the total savings there And all of these are true reflections as we head into the budget for 18-19. The only department where we were really moving through attrition was in the custodial realm, as we were trying not to make those impacts now. So, but they're not part of this, because remember, they are part of the allocation document, not the staffing formula. But we know that we'll see further cost savings as we move through those reductions over the course of the next year. I'll just turn it over to any questions that you might have.
Before we have a chance to vote on Monday, I imagine you all will probably go back and reconcile some of the numbers that Kim gave of where she believed there might have been 13 positions or 3 positions or what have you, right?
I know Ms. Collins has made a note of those. I
Okay.
don't know if she has any comments about that now, or just hold those off and bring that to you on Monday for the, okay. Yeah, she's going to look at all of those, so,
Okay.
so we will definitely rectify that.
Can we discuss technology? Because,
Which page are you on to?
let's see,
What's the front
slides
cover? Okay,
8 and 9.
gotcha.
Because we have 56 people with a total savings of what? How many people? We lost 2.25 positions. I mean, we know that technology positions are some of the most expensive positions. We didn't decrease a lot last year. We decreased 4 positions. Is there any more savings we can get out of technology?
Well, trust me, I asked that question repeatedly, didn't I? As we went through, and it became a matter of and what I asked him to bring to me was, give me some options, 1, 2, and 3. And then we got to the point where, as we started looking at further reductions, and you'll see that there was a cost savings of $155,000, and he did make some reductions in the 17-18 positions as well, that we were to the point of what services will we not be able to support. He actually had a proposal where he wanted to add some positions because he felt like they were justifiable, and we just said, no, we're not adding any of those positions. And so, and to the point where the last proposal, I said, well, you can't have all these, so cut another one, and he did. So I don't think that we can find any other cost savings currently, because we are, as you said, technology is a growing and important area. We have some new things coming on board in terms of technology to further support. You've seen the digital presentation briefly. You'll see more about the digital classroom plan coming up. And so I know that you'll certainly see our focus to increase technology access, as well as just our operations side of the technology as well. And some of the things that he's really transitioning over to go back to the security positions, and how do we provide greater security oversight in regards to technologies as well. So I think we've done all we can do in this area.
Are they in the schools? Or are all these all down in Mascot?
No, some are in the schools, the technicians. Some schools and
What would be the things we would have to cut if we were to cut some of these positions?
Yeah, Dr. Wheeler will come and talk. Keep in mind, we found over $2 million in reduction, so we're.
I know, but I'm also keeping in mind that we have, what, about $2 million worth of SROs to buy? So, that's hard.
So we can cut the internet.
Well, I know.
We can cut the phone systems. We can cut email.
But what are things that are actively being,
I'm sorry?
like, I'm just trying to, do we have particular people on particular programs on Schoology? Or
We have particular
Eduphoria?
people. We have a gentleman who supports the email and the phone system. So there's actually a couple of people that do that. We have technicians in the schools that go out when one enters a work order. They go and address those issues. We have someone that oversees our penetration and our security, so that we don't end up like Manatee County, where all of a sudden our financial records are out on the internet. So we have a variety of things in technology that we do oversee. I mean, this is if you compare us to Marion County, we're about the same amount of students, and they have 95 people in their department. We have 50, around 50, so. And then some of them are custodians, and some of them I have one custodian that cleans both sites.
It's not on this list.
So we could certainly look at cutting, but it will impact the students or the teachers or whatever we want to cut. You know, there are applications. But technology, in my opinion, is the 21st century utility. I mean, we expect wireless to work. When it goes down during testing into varies or anything, we expect it to work, and we expect someone to go address it. Currently, we have 2,300 access points, which will be increasing. The intent is to have an access point in every classroom. One expects the internet to work. One expects when they pick up the phone system that the phone is going to work. So I mean, we can compare Volusia County. There's 62,000 students. They have 130 people in their technology, similar to us, not in size. It does take a variety of skill sets. You have about 5,000 switches in the closets with the wires that plug in. There's about 5,000 of those switches that you manage, and anytime you coordinate that, you have to put VLANs in place that says this traffic goes here, this traffic goes there, and you have to touch those. People have to touch them. We don't have robots to do that yet. So, not yet. I mean, maybe not in my lifetime, but someone's lifetime. But I think we're pretty lean, as the superintendent said. I mean, we can continue to look at cutting and refining, and as we looked at vacancies, and then we looked at supporting things. So we did cut the network administrator positions. They're pretty highly paid, and we're trying to repurpose that. So our philosophy is when a computer is, when we get rid of it, nobody should want it. You know, so any technology that we have, no one should want it. We should repair it until we can repair it, and then it just goes away somewhere else when it can no longer function. So I'm not sure if I answered your questions, but we are pretty lean.
You are
compared-
talking a lot.
We are pretty lean compared to other school districts. So I mean.
It wasn't going to stop them.
Any other questions for me?
So now, we noticed that much of these positions are resolved through attrition, so that means they're currently vacant now. Those are salaries that we had budgeted for this year that ended up not having to be spent. So how does that impact this year's financial condition, or how does that help that?
I'll let Ms. Briggs speak to that.
There she is. I was wondering where Karen was. She always sits over there.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. So I've noticed through this, many of these positions are resolved through attrition, which means they're vacant now, and some of them have obviously been vacant longer than others. Those are positions that we would have budgeted for this year and not have to spend the money to fill them. So how does that impact this year's financial situation, or how does it improve that?
So that you are correct, those are positions that we would have budgeted. In some cases, that will reduce the lapse that was also budgeted, and in some cases, we hope that we will have savings above what we budgeted for lapse.
Any idea what that total savings comes to and what the plans are for it?
I believe that is a presentation I'm
Okay.
working on for another day.
All right.
So we've been talking about that, and that was really one of our goals, is we were going to reduce overall costs for 17-18, and we froze positions or just chose not to fill them. In her department alone, I know that they've been down a number of folks as they've worked through this past year in order to create some lapse. But if you remember, lapse is part of our budget, so
Right.
it was part of how we were able to get to that 3% fund balance for 17-18 was to have that. So we've got to pay off that lapse first before we can think about savings. And so what I'd asked her to do is to look at, kind of do a projection of where we are and where we anticipate being at the close of this year, so we can see if there is truly a lapse, because it's hard to, people think there's a separate pot of money that's sitting over here that we can just grab, and that's not the case because it was part of that balanced budget. So
The
and it
savings
was-
only happens if the lapse is greater than what you were anticipating. And
Correct.
we were already obviously anticipating some vacant positions, so did we end up
Correct.
with more than we anticipated?
Yeah. And
That's the big
when we
question.
run the final payroll runs, we'll know better in the coming months, but certainly as we approach the close of the 17-18 budget, we'll have that information. And I know I bug her a lot about it, because just trying to get an idea of where we are, because we were proud of the fact that we know by looking at, in comparison to months previous, that we have saved, a good bit of money, but again, we've got to make sure that we meet that lapse. The lapse was budgeted at kind of a high level. I can't remember exactly the dollar amount, but it was
Yeah. and
pretty high.
It was budgeted higher than any of us wanted.
Okay.
But it was lower than previous year. So that is, heading in the right direction. And additionally, some of the positions where we've reduced and they weren't filled, that will reduce budgeting the lapse next year, because you won't have the offset. So
Right.
that's also part of what we're working to get away from, because it's much easier to assess where you are during the year when you're not constantly trying to play. It's like playing catch-up football all year long, and that's not fun. So,
So our goal is to not budget lapse. I mean, that's where we would love to be, so that we do have that pot of money that we know is truly a savings, kind of a savings account that we can ensure that we have, rather than being part of the base budget.
Karen, how much in salaries is in here?
sorry,
How much money in salaries is in here?
is on the salary.
In
As
the
opposed
district
to the
staffing plan.
allocation, I would be reluctant to quote a dollar without running that.
Can you run it for
The
me?
price is right.
I want to say approximately, are you saying as a percentage of our total budget or percentage of total salaries?
No, I want to know, what I want to know is what percentage is, what was our total savings, 2 million?
2.1.
Yeah, I want to know what percentage is of our total district staffing plan is 2.167803.74.
I would have to run that.
That's my actual question.
I would have to run that, or refer to a budget book right now.
Okay, that's fine. Can you do that for me?
I can, and get back to you, and I'll send it to everybody.
All right.
Okay? Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Other questions in regards to 17? So that means we're at board member comments at this point. So,
I'm good.
okay, thank you, Dr. Burns.
I'll wait.
All right, Mr. Doug?
So I'll defer to Monday.
Okay,
Same.
all right. Superintendent.
So I want to remind everyone that we have our district-wide school guardian survey out on the website. So you have until 5 p.m. on Friday to get your input in on that survey. And I also want to thank everyone who joined all of us at the AMC Theater in Leesburg last week. We saw the documentary that was, thanks to Board Member Matthias and the Education Foundation, we were able to sell out 3 theaters and had a number of folks there for that viewing. And we know that this is just one way that we can reach out to our community and all learn more about this very important topic and just inspire that healing and hope that we are hoping for everyone in our community. And lastly, the month of April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And in 2008, the organization Prevent Child Abuse America introduced the pinwheel as the national symbol for child abuse prevention. So this month, all over the country, people are planting pinwheel gardens as a reminder of their obligation to keep children safe and protected. So Dr. Chris Landry And the Student Services Department will be planting blue pinwheels right out front of the building after the conclusion of this meeting. So we encourage everybody to step out front and help plant a pinwheel in the garden. I guess we have a garden out there. If not, we probably do now. And, we made one. And be part of this opportunity and experience and recognition of Child Abuse Prevention Month. So thank you, Dr. Landry.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. I was shown a newspaper article today. I didn't see it over the weekend because it wasn't in the sports page. That talks about a impact fee report from the Auditor General. And I just wanted to let you know what I knew about it up to this point in time. And several days ago, or a couple weeks ago, Ms. Briggs called me and told me that the Auditor General had come out with a preliminary report criticizing our use of impact fees to pay debt. I assumed that the way the report read, that the objection was that somehow they felt that the impact fee ordinance did not allow repayment of debt. Well, we were aware they had raised this issue, I think, in either Miami-Dade, and Mr. Gang, who is our bond counsel, had been involved in providing a response, so we retained Mr. Gang to take a look at the objection that they raised in this report and see if it was similar to the problem in Miami-Dade. Sent him all the old interlocals that originally started the impact fee back in 1981, I believe, and the ordinance and the ordinances that existed today. Because you understand, impact fees aren't a state legislated fee or tax. The statutes that enable impact fees to be passed by local government are for local government. And as we are all aware, the school board really doesn't have any say in passing an impact fee or what the terms of the impact fee or how much the impact fee is. So went back and looked at the impact fee and looked at the original interlocal, and both of them were very clear that when Lake County passed an impact fee that was for school impact fees, that the school district was specifically permitted to utilize those impact fees to pay debt. So that didn't, and Mr. Gang wrote an opinion letter to the Auditor General. That didn't seem to satisfy their question, so we assumed that if they didn't like that, then it had to be that their position was that the debt we were paying wasn't for new seats, which the ordinance says if you use the impact fee, you have to use the impact fee dollars. If you're going to pay debt, you pay debt caused by the construction of new seats. Well, I talked to Karen about that, and we went back and looked, and the COPS, the certificates of participation, which are the bonds that were being paid by the impact fees, all of the ones that were being paid included construction of schools that were almost 100% new seats capacity. So those were all being used, the impact fee dollars that were all being used for ultimately new seats. And I specifically asked Karen, well, were there enough projects in the COPS that were being paid by the impact fees to cover the impact fee amount for new seats in those particular COPS? And she said there's more than enough for the ones that we have. So they didn't seem to agree after we told them that too. So we're really down to, we're not sure what they're complaining about. They don't provide us any legislation, rule, regulation, ordinance, or anything else that would justify their position that we're not allowed to use these impact fees to pay these particular COPS. It's pretty much just a position, well, we think that that's the way it is, or I believe Karen found out from them that there's somebody in the Department of Education who is yet unidentified who thinks that we shouldn't be doing that. So we don't think that's a legitimate reason. An argument that you've got to track each impact fee payment for each debt payment means that you could never do anything with the impact fees, because we get impact fees in dollars at a time, and if you get $10,000 in impact fees, you can't go build a seat or 1/10 of a desk and then wait for the next to build the next 1/10 of a desk. The impact fees are paid in collected groups, and what we used, some of the impact fees that came in was to pay the debt on the bonds that created the new seats, which was the intent of the impact fee. So as far as I'm aware, there's no further appeal for us to take from what the Auditor General's report is. That's the report. As far as whether something else is going to happen, I assume someone from the Department of Education might look at the audit report and ask us. I'm not sure what department that might be or what procedure that might be. So Karen and I have talked about it. As yet, we have an auditor who disagrees with our position that we are entitled to use those specifically for paying off debt, and unless some other individual in the Department of Education complains about how we're doing it, I'm not sure there's any action for us to take. It would be helpful if they could point out a statute or rule or regulation that we could go look at, but right now all we have is the ordinance and the fact that we have used those COPs for new seats just like the ordinance requires us to do. So that's all I have so far.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I can talk to you afterwards. No, I think he.
Nor does it have to be on the agenda.
Would you allow public comment?
This is new for me, so let me discuss with them, and I'll meet with you after the meeting. So, any objection to adjourning the meeting? Okay. With that being said, this meeting is adjourned.